You've heard of Nero, of course. The mad Roman emperor who was renowned for his cruelty and who, by popular legend, did nothing but strum on his lyre while the city of Rome burnt to ashes. So you get it, he was out of his mind. But no. Get ready to be shocked because you have no idea exactly how insane the last of the Julio-Claudian emperors was. But before we get into today's video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Now, let's get our facts straight. Nero, in full, Nero Claudius Caesar Augustus Germanicus, was a Roman emperor who lived during the 1st century AD. Born into a twisted web of the Roman royal family, Nero was adopted by Emperor Claudius as heir to the Roman Empire. He was the 5th and last emperor of the Julio-Claudian dynasty, which had been founded by Augustus. At the time Nero ascended the throne, he was about 16 or 17 years old. In brief, Nero's entire short, violent life was a little more than a self-indulgent artist who was dedicated to promoting his own legend above all else. He was involved in just a few more petty crimes, like assassinating his mother, maybe executing his first wife, killing his pregnant second wife. He was also considered a great persecutor of the church and widely considered to early Christians to be the Antichrist. But who's counting? We're counting. Let's get into some of the most evil things done by Emperor Nero. Number 1. To consolidate his power, Nero took the life of his brother and his mother. Nero, the son of Agrippina, was not expected to be the emperor. However, she married her uncle, Emperor Claudius, and persuaded her husband to adopt Nero as his son. She cunningly made way for him, like I should say a cunning, selfish, caring mother would for her son. But she was in a bit of a haste. With Nero next in line for the throne, Agrippina supposedly poisoned Claudius and pinned the deed on another woman. But she would soon learn the hard way bad deeds have bad results. Her plan ultimately backfired when 17-year-old Nero took the throne. He was warned or perhaps brainwashed and manipulated by both his advisors and his friends to watch out for Agrippina, who wants to overtake him. In an attempt to secure his hold on the throne, Nero poisoned his stepbrother Britannicus, and then, fearing his own mother's wrath, he plotted the murder of his own mother by inviting her as a guest of honor to a sumptuous banquet at his villa. According to another account, Nero had planned for his mother's ship to sink, and Agrippina either died at sea or survived the incident, only for Nero to send soldiers to her villa to finish the job. Number 2. Then he took the life of his first wife. Nero and his first wife, Octavia, didn't get along well. They got married around the time he was 14. After several years of marriage, the two were estranged, and the cruel emperor decided he wanted to get rid of her. First, he divorced her and accused her of adultery. When the Roman people didn't take kindly to his accusations, he banished Octavia. He then attempted to have her sentenced to death for her supposed adultery. Reports from the time claimed that Nero's accusations were so baseless that even under torture, witnesses would not admit to any wrongdoing on the part of Octavia. Eventually, though, Nero got it his way. He was the emperor after all, and Octavia was executed. Number 3. If you didn't think things could get worse than this, well, buckle up. Nero kicked his pregnant second wife to death, and then married a guy who looked like her. The case could be made that Poppaea Sabina was Nero's greatest love. He divorced his first wife to marry her, and then quickly impregnated her once they were married. But then, Poppaea mysteriously perished before having their second child. Historians of the time claim that Nero actually kicked Poppaea to death. Modern historians are a bit more forgiving and claim it's equally as likely that Poppaea perished of a miscarriage. At any rate, what is known is that sometime later, Nero fell in love with a man named Sporus, whose most striking feature was his resemblance to Nero's late wife. Nero had the boy castrated and brought back to the palace, where he took to calling him Lady and Queen. It is pretty clear by this point Nero was a very disturbed and mentally sick teenager, and the next deed will explain all the more why. Number 4. Nero liked to dress up as a wild animal. As Nero's reign progressed, so did his sexual peculiarities. He may not have had relations with his mother, as rumors claim, but Nero's taste was certainly depraved. The coastal resort of Baia was one of Nero's prized indulgences. Nero spent a fortune on banquets in Baia, located along the Gulf of Naples. But his gatherings weren't just about food. Though he was content in going to brothels in his youth, as he got older his tastes got a little more violent. According to Roman historian Cassius Dion, Nero had a rather peculiar game of his. He would fasten unclothed boys and girls to stakes, and then, putting on the hide of a wild beast and disguising himself, he would attack them and satisfy his brutal lust under the appearance of devouring parts of their body. Number 5. Nero was an extreme narcissist, and without his mother or any sort of parental or healthy adult supervision, with all the power and control, he went out of control. Until his mother's passing in 59 AD, Nero wasn't doing half bad as emperor. He spoke out for Roman slaves, he did away with capital punishment, and he even lowered taxes in the empire. Though he always had a reputation for hitting brothels and taverns and acting like a fool, Nero was able to keep it together. Once Agrippina passed away, however, the boy emperor quickly lost control. Around this time, with his popularity waning, Nero felt the need to increase his popularity. Just like any struggling star of today, the emperor began to perform in public by singing songs he had written. According to some historians, the emperor had a slight and distinct voice, so that he moved his whole audience to laughter or tears at once. But in order to ensure that his young ego wasn't hurt, Nero pulled together a special squad of 5,000 soldiers called Augustans, whose only job was to clap when Nero's performance prompted it. These soldiers were also encouraged to get the audience involved in the shouting and applause as well. Number 6. Next, Nero supposedly ignored the Great Fire of Rome and maybe even caused it. Of all the things that Nero was supposedly responsible for, the Great Fire of Rome might be the worst. The fire, which burned for several days and nights, left much of Rome scorched by the time it was finally extinguished. According to several historians from the time, Nero played music in the palace while the city burnt down. On the other hand, many other historians also claim this to be a myth. The exact cause of the fire was never determined. There are those who believe it was Nero himself who set the fire to clear way for a new palace he wanted to build, and we'll be getting to that one in a while. But when the fire broke out, Nero was 35 miles away at his villa in Antium. When he got the news, he rushed back to the city to begin administering aid immediately. The reason the fiddling myth arose was thanks to Roman people's belief that Nero was a pampered aristocrat who cared little for the plight of people. He was considered to be so careless and carefree that he could play music while his people suffered. Number 7. Then, he blamed the Christians for it. Regardless of the actual cause of the fire, after the Great Fire, the public came to the conclusion that Nero had actually started the 9-day blaze that engulfed 2/3 of Rome. In order to throw the scent off his trail, Nero put the blame squarely on the Christians. At the time, Christians were a small, disliked minority in Rome. Under orders from Nero, they would be rounded up, subjected to horrific acts of torture before execution. There are stories that Nero ordered Christians dipped in oil, hung from poles, and set ablaze in his garden like candles. It was said he would take walks through the garden at night to admire the burning bodies. Number 8. Nero emptied the Roman treasury, rebuilding his palace. After the Great Fire, Nero opted to spend out the expansive Roman treasury. He had the temples raided, the silver currency devalued, and there are reports of him forcing the richest people in Rome to leave their properties to him in their wills, before he made them take their own life. All this to build an opulent 100-acre palatial complex that became known as the Domus Aurea, or the Golden House. At the center of the Domus Aurea was a 100-foot-tall bronze statue of Nero himself, which the emperor dubbed the Colossus Neronis. And last but not least, number 9. Nero panicked and ordered his servant to slay him. In the final months of his short life, the emperor tried to flee Rome after some political hostility. Ultimately, Nero's murderous and debauched lifestyle in Baiae caught up with him. In 68 AD, after a turbulent 13-year reign, the Roman Senate ran out of patience and declared Nero a public enemy. Nero then fled, and on June 9, 68 AD, at the age of 30, he took his own life. His death ended the Julio-Claudian dynasty. And that sums up the story of Nero, a mentally disturbed teenager emperor of Rome who came to power in a very corrupt society with many corrupt people around him, and just simply couldn't handle the pressure and crack, doing all kinds of crazy things, from exploiting his power in unusual ways in means of promiscuity, murder, and extravagance. However, I should clarify, so not to be biased, most of the information we have today about Emperor Nero comes from the works of Tacitus, Suetonius, and Cassius Dion, all of whom were writing after Nero's reign. These men belonged to the senatorial class, who hated the emperor very much. This would provide some explanation for the extremely negative portrayal of Nero in these historical sources. According to historian Edward Champlin, the common people of Rome actually might have liked Nero. It was the elites and Christians who had issues with him, and they were the ones that wrote down this nasty history, which makes sense. Nonetheless, this doesn't make Nero a saint either. Considering the condition of Rome under his rule, devastating, one thing can be said for sure. Nero was one of the worst Roman emperors history has seen. If you liked our video, don't forget to subscribe and follow our channel for more videos like this one.